with the next witness, and Sagar Thomas Jahate would lead that witness. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Could you say again, Mr. Chair?
No, I was just saying thank you very much indeed.
Appreciate it.
I, Baboucarr Sowe, do swear that I'll speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, commissioners, and good afternoon, members of the audience. Good afternoon, Mr. Sowe.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the TRRC.
Yeah, thank you.
As you know, my name is Sagar. We've met before, and I'll be the one leading you in your testimony today. We have a few guidelines here at the TRRC, which I would like to explain briefly before we begin. I would advise you just to assume a comfortable sitting position and draw the microphone closer to you.
Okay, I think it's fine this way.
Because your testimony is being interpreted into the different local languages, I would advise you to take short statements and take it slowly, and also to avoid overlapping our speeches. Kindly wait for my questions before you answer.
Okay.
I would also like to remind you of your duty to tell the truth and to tell you that it is a criminal offense to lie before the commission, and it is against the TRRC Act as well, not to tell the truth before the commission. Is that understood?
That's understood.
Your testimony today will be mainly focused on the events of the April 10th, 11th, 2000 students' demonstrations, and how you went about as Commission of Operations during the students' demonstrations on both days, on the 10th and on the 11th of April. Thank you very much. Are you ready to proceed?
Yes, we could proceed.
Can you please give us your full names?
My names are Baboucarr Sowe.
And what is your address?
My current address is Bruceby.
What is your date of birth?
My date of birth is 15th of March, 1963.
What is your occupation?
I am a UN staff member.
And where do you currently work?
I work for the UNDP Banjul Country Office.
And what is your position there?
I am a security sector reform specialist.
Kindly give us a brief history of your education.
I started primary school in 1971, Brikama Primary School, and then I went to Muslim High School in 1979. And then I also graduated from Cranfield University on security sector management. That's my expert area. Basically, those are the school years that I have attended.
What did you do after you finished high school?
When I finished high school, I first worked as a cooperative SECO assistant. That's just for one season. Then I joined the gendarmerie. That's where I started my service, my career as a gendarmerie. Then now I'm police, or I was police because I'm retired now.
Can you kindly take us through your progression into the gendarmerie and the different ranks that you held and different positions before you moved into the police?
Okay, I joined the gendarmerie in 1985, and then there was the amalgam. Sorry, the confederation between the Gambia and Senegal, and gendarmerie was in existence. And then when the gendarmerie was disbanded, some of us were taken to the army and then later on to the police. So after the disbandment of the gendarmerie, I first moved to the army as a regimental signal officer, signaler. Then I later joined the police as commissioner of police.
And when did you move into the army?
This was in 19. I think it's 95 when I returned from my officer basic training from Turkey.
And where were you during the 1994 coup d'etat?
I was out of town.
Where were you?
I was in Turkey.
And what were you doing in Turkey?
I was doing my officer basic course from 1993 to 1995.
And that's for the army?
Gendarmerie.
That was for the gendarmerie?
Yes.
So when you came back, you moved to the army briefly?
When I came back, they first moved me to the army briefly as a regimental signal officer. Then I was moved down to the police as commissioner of police.
And where were you posted?
At the headquarters in Banjul.
As a regimental signals officer in the army, where were you posted?
At the army headquarters in Banjul.
And then you moved to the police?
Then I moved to the police.
When did you move to the police?
95 September.
And what position did you hold?
Commissioner of police. I was appointed as commissioner of police.
And as commissioner of police, what portfolios was under your supervision?
I was in charge of operations, and then at some point I was moved to administration. Then there were only two commissioners of police. You're either admin or your operations. So when I first started in 95, I was in the operations. And then later on, I was moved to the admin and I came back to the operations. So it was back and forth until when I left in 2005, when I left.
And under what circumstances did you leave the police in 2005?
In 2005, I was selected to serve as a police advisor in the UN mission in Sudan. And then that's when I left. But then I was seconded because then I was still serving. So when I came back, I got an appointment with New York, so I moved over to New York, and then that's how I eventually left the service, so I didn't come back.
And that's what has led to your current career here in the Gambia?
Exactly.
Under
So I
the
spent
UNDP.
10 years in New York, then 2 years in Afghanistan, and then this is my second year in the Gambia.
Where were you in April 2000?
April 2000, I was then commissioner in charge of operations. I was headquartered or officed in Banjul at the police headquarters.
And as commissioner of operations, where were you in the organizational structure of the Gambia Police Force? What position?
I was number 3 in the police. Beside the IG and the deputy, I was the 3rd in command.
And what was your role as commissioner of operations? My apologies.
Commissioner of operations, I was responsible for coordinating all operational activities of the police throughout the country. That's basically my main role, is to coordinate operational activities for the police.
And what do you mean by operational activities?
Yeah, things ranging from general duty, ranging from operational duties, things that are general in nature in terms of their coordination and their operation is all centered at the headquarters, and I was the one in charge.
Could you give examples of what kind of operations perhaps you would
For
be
example,
coordinating?
if there are, let me give you an example, international marches when they happen, election duties when they happen, or operational duties that relates to bringing the totality of the police force, to carry out something that is coordinated through my office.
And would that involve events where you would need to control crowds?
Yes.
What about demonstrations and riots?
Including demonstrations too, yes.
Did you have any experience of any demonstrations or riots that you actually coordinated in the past?
Could you say that?
Did you
Again?
have any experience of coordinating demonstrations or riots in your position as Commissioner of
Yes, coordinating in the
Operations?
sense that I write orders and then give directives as to how demonstrations should be handled or how football duties should be handled, for example. Yes, I do that from the headquarters.
And in the organizational structure of the Gambia Police Force, you've already told us that you're third in command.
Correct.
Can you tell us who reports to you and how that is filtered down to the men?
All the divisional commissioners or the divisional commanders, they all report to me, and then that's the coordination role I have.
You have mentioned that the divisional commanders report directly to you. Is that correct?
Yes.
And who reports to the divisional commanders?
Say that again.
Who reports to the divisional commanders?
The respective units under their AOR or under their responsibility or their divisions, they are the ones who report to the divisional commander, and then the divisional commander reports to me as the operations officer.
And is it correct that the unit heads would also have men who report directly
To them, yeah. So that's how the chain works. The men report to the unit heads report to the divisional commanders, and the divisional commanders report to the headquarters.
And how would that work out in practical terms?
Yeah, that's what I'm explaining. I mean, it's a chain down from the least junior all the way to the echelon to the IG. So I too report to the deputy IG, who also subsequently reports to the IG. That's how the chain is.
I'll give you a specific example. Like in the case of an operation, how does information go up to the chain of command, from the men up to the chain of command, up to you?
It goes by feedback. For example, well, before the feedback comes, it starts with directives given as to the operations. You give directives, the operation is conducted, and after the operations is conducted, a debriefing is made. It flows back upwards again.
And would you usually have briefings as well before operations are conducted?
The divisional commanders or the operation commanders will have briefings, yes. Sometimes in major operations, the operation commander himself can rally the divisional commanders or the area where the operation is going to take place. If he has any information, then he provides it.
How would you normally coordinate the operational activities of the police?
Through my operational orders.
Would you have operational orders in all cases?
Yes. In all major operations, they come along with operational orders. That's part of the job that I do.
And how would you know that information has been filtered down to the men?
When operational orders are made, they are sent to the registry for distribution, so they are sent out. That's how they get to their destinations.
And how would you actually know that this has been done in practical terms?
No, my part is to draft the orders and then do them, and then the registry part is the one that does the distribution. They have a way book where, when orders are given, it is given out to the divisional OCs or the commanders, or sometimes they are published in force orders, and then that publication goes to everybody.
And you would not be in a position where you would have to check and find out whether these orders have actually been received and understood by the men.
Normally that can happen. For example, it can happen that I can verify, but then normally when you issue orders, because there's already a routine way of conveying them, you just put them in that way and then they're conveyed.
Were there operational orders during the April 10th and 11th demonstrations?
Certainly there were.
Do you have a copy of these operational orders?
On me here, I don't, but then they must be in the system.
Did you give testimony before the Commission of Inquiry in 2000?
Yes, I did.
And did you send a copy of those operational
Yes,
orders
I
there?
submitted.
If you see them again, will you be in a position to identify them?
Sure, because my signature should be on them.
Okay, very well. We'll give you a copy of those operational orders for you to identify them. Thank you. Mr. Usher.
That's my signature.
Mr. Usher, can you kindly leave the report with him?
Okay.
Oh, after you have shown them to the chair and commissioners. Mr. Usher, please kindly Mr. Usher, kindly go back to the witness. My apologies. Mr. Sowe, can you please identify your signature on the document?
Yeah, that's what I first looked at. I looked at the signature and I realized it's my signature.
Thank you very much. Mr. Usher, kindly give them to the chairman and the commissioners. So you have now confirmed that this was the operational orders that you wrote in April 2000?
Correct.
Council, you may continue unless you need the document.
Yes, we need to refer to the
okay.
orders. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're coming back?
Thank you very much, Mr. Usher. You're very useful. Mr. Sowe, you have the operational orders in front of you. Can you please read the heading out to us?
I need my glasses for this. Hold on a second.
No problem. Take your time.
And one of the handles is broken, though. Excuse me about that. So, Gambia Police Force, General and Administrative Instructions for Operation Student Watch commencing Friday, 7th April 2000. That's the heading.
Can you just explain briefly to us what the operational orders entailed and what it gave directions to do?
Okay, operational orders are normally given when a situation arises and then you receive briefings to say, here is a situation and this is what is required. On the 7th of April, when the leadership of the police called up a meeting, we were apprised of an imminent student demonstration, and then the IG instructed that let all the mechanisms be put in place, and then for an imminent demonstration, for example, and then the orders now will define, how the police would conduct itself. And then the orders will sort of highlight what the situation is and then what is required, what are the kind of resources that are going to be used for this purpose. So these orders were as a result of such a situation brief that we had, and then out of that, the orders were drafted.
And who were the orders directed to?
They are directed to divisional commanders, unit heads, OCs.
Can you tell us specifically which divisional commanders they were directed to?
Now, this particular one was directed countrywide, because when I do orders at the headquarters, I refer them countrywide, especially for such a briefing where it says student demonstration and then you wouldn't know where it would come from. So the orders were very general and generic and then only targeted to all the divisional heads.
Were the orders about how the police officers would conduct themselves during the demonstrations?
Yes, absolutely. They define how the police officers should conduct themselves, what are the tools that they should use, ensuring that it all falls within the confines of the law, determining, the amount of force just required, to be able to take care of a particular situation. That's what orders would generally define. Sometimes they are context-based. If you receive, the information about covering a situation, for example, for football, what are the situations that arise out of football games. So you define your orders based on that. If this is election security, you might as well consider those situations and then define your orders based on some of the things that police have learned as to how to handle the generality of an election security. And for this particular one, it was based on the information that there is an imminent student demonstration, and then the orders were defined to guide police officers as to how they would conduct themselves in the event demonstration happens.
Please tell us what were those details that were supposed to guide police officers during those demonstrations?
It's the details of their comportment. I mean, what kind of materials or tools to use. For example, in the riot thing, it's like riot gears, the buttons, the seals, the helmet, the water bottles, and all.
Can you just kindly read out what the operational orders said about how the police officers were to comport themselves and what tools they were to use during the demonstrations?
Okay, it says here, task allocation. The Commander Territorial, in collaboration with the divisional OCs, are to provide the following. The Banjul Division in particular, there should be one platoon of 20 men with riot equipment to be headed by ASP Lamin Jabang. What orders normally would do as well is to define or is to allocate tasks and then name, the particular area or the OC in charge. Kanifing Division, we said 3 platoons by 20 men, each to be headed by ASP Modusise and ASP.
Please read into the mic. Just adjust the mic so that you
Okay.
can read into it. Thank you.
Okay, let me do it this way. Kanifing Division, 3 platoons of 20 men each to be headed by ASP Mamadou Sise and ASP Modu Gay. They are to be based at the PIU headquarters and the divisional headquarters. Brikama Division is 1 platoon of 20 men to be headed by ASP Famara Jalo, and they are to be based at Brikama Station. Provincial divisional commanders to form their own platoons and take full charge of their respective divisions. Then the criminal intelligence unit are requested to fully monitor and cover all potential targeted areas as mentioned, and to furnish the command with the latest intelligence report. So these were basically the kind of logistical arrangements in terms of allocation of tasks for the OCs to comport or conduct themselves. Then we will define issues relating to transportation, allocation, fuel, dress code, assembly point, and then the discretions and initiatives to be used. We will define all that. The orders normally define all that.
Kindly explain what these discretions are.
Okay, let me read from the orders here. I said, during the execution of our lawful duties, commanders are required to be as discreet as possible and use only that necessary force required for handling any situation. All members of the force are reminded that they should be cautious, open, neutral, tact, and approachable. Duties are to be carried out in accordance with the law and stand to protect life and property in the best possible and discreet manner. We should avoid provoking disturbances and bear the required level of tolerance to avert any situation. Sub-unit heads are required to depict from these general instructions for their own consumption and take account of the men under their command, including equipment.
According to these operational orders that you've just read, what are the necessary tools that the men on the ground were to use on that day?
The tools are riot helmets. Like I said, every time every order is context based. If the situation is about riots, then the equipment, the tools would be the riot equipments to be used, for the purpose.
Kindly tell us what this riot equipment was. What did it include?
A riot equipment would include a baton, a riot seal, the seal that you use, to prevent stones or missiles or projectiles coming. You have the helmet, then you have the gas mask, and then you have gas canisters, that sometimes, they can carry. So these are the types of equipment that a full riot personnel, will have. They can also have rocket launchers. You use them to launch, the gas canisters, to the crowd.
And during these demonstrations, did you actually anticipate any other tools that may be used during the demonstrations?
All I anticipated for was riot tools and nothing beyond that, because that's the kind of information we have. So we were expecting to deal with a normative riot situation.
So no guns were allowed?
No guns were allowed, no.
And what was the conduct of the men to be? Were they allowed to beat the students?
They are not allowed to beat the students. That's not supposed to be. If it happened, it's not supposed to be.
Were they supposed to protect life?
Yes.
And property?
Correct.
And you also mentioned that they were to avoid provoking the students.
Yes.
Kindly tell us, after you drafted the operational orders, what happened next? What did you do?
No. I mean, when I draft the operational orders, normally they are sent for typing, they are typed, and then they are distributed.
And who are they distributed to, and how are they distributed?
They go to the registry. The police headquarters has a registry. The registry now takes them to all the places that are mentioned in the orders.
And this would be in writing?
Like I said, they have a way book that sort of shows, who signs off for it, and it is sign off. You sign it off. They have these, what do you call them? Station clerks. There are people who are assigned specifically to do the admin bit of it. Yes.
My question was specifically whether the operational orders are distributed to the divisional heads in writing.
It's the order itself that is carried. The order is carried in some form of an envelope, for example, and then it is labeled that it goes to, or sometimes they do markers. For example, you have a distribution list, and then you have a highlighter for each of the areas where it goes.
And would you be in a position to know whether, after they have been received by the divisional heads in writing, whether they are conveyed to the unit heads by those divisional heads also in writing?
No. I didn't do that verification. Perhaps I should have, but I did not.
And what about the information going to the men? Do you know in what form they would arrive at the men?
That is also dependent on the divisional commanders, because even the orders specifically stated how or that they should inform the men accordingly. That information can either go in writing or it can go in the form of briefing. The divisional commander or the OC has a responsibility to call up a parade and then brief the men of the situation and what they need to do.
So these orders can basically be translated verbally to the men by the unit heads?
Mostly, and you can imagine 20 years ago, the police was not as, the literacy rate was really very low. Not many people actually can read and write. Well, some of them, that is also a major concern for the police. So many of these things are said verbally, is maybe a few who translate orders break them down or unpack them into detailed writing to give guidance and instructions, but then mainly what happens is when we write these orders at the headquarters, they get to the ground, it's always translated verbally. People are called up, in a parade form, and then they are explained.
And as Commissioner of Operations, how did you ensure that this was done considering the circumstances? You just mentioned about the literacy levels being low and the lack of education.
I count on the divisional commissioners. I rely on them to ensure that they transmit the message, because I don't go into the nitty-gritty of the details to make sure they get to the last person. So I count on them, as their immediate supervisor.
So you do not have a process of verifying whether they have done what they were supposed to do?
No, I don't have any process of verification. At the time, it wasn't in existence.
And would you say that this is the way that things should have been done at that time?
Well, at the time, that's what obtained. If you would have asked me today, I would have done that differently. After having gone through, a lot of experience and lessons learned and so on, I would have done that. I would have done by today. It would have been different if I were to, do those kind of stuff, because then all the monitoring and verification mechanisms would have been in place.
Can you please tell us if anybody can actually change the orders, the written orders that you actually prepared?
It's possible these orders can be changed. But then when they are changed, normally you may not have that changes in writing. People can give verbal orders and then defy exactly what is written. That is very possible.
And would these changes be made without reference to you?
Without reference to me, yes.
Would that be lawful?
It may not be lawful as long as if it contravenes what is within the confines of the law. If at all it is within the confines of the law. The reason why I'm saying that is sometimes some of these orders may come from above me. For example, the deputy or the IG himself can give something completely different from what I wrote, you understand? So because they also have the leverage to talk to whoever within the service directly. So I can write orders, and then people or somebody above me can, say something different, and what he says, supersedes or overrides the written orders that I have.
Please give us examples of these instances, please.
No, I'm not saying there is an instance of that. I'm saying it is possible. You asked me if it is possible that it happens, and I said, yes, it is possible. I'm giving you the circumstance in which it can happen. And that is, after writing the orders, somebody feel differently about what is in the orders and then give a verbal directives. That is possible.
And you've already told us that it is possible that such orders can be changed by your superiors, i.e. those that are above you. Can they be changed by those who are below you?
Those below me don't have authority to change orders. They cannot, or they should not.
So they must implement the orders to the letter, as you have instructed.
As they are written, correct.
And do you know whether your operational orders for April 10th and 11th had been changed by your superiors?
Not that I'm aware of.
So no one had changed them, so they remained the same?
As far as I'm concerned, I don't have any information that suggests that those orders were changed.
And it was those operational orders that were guiding the activities of all the men on the ground on
Correct.
that day?
Correct.
In accordance with the explanations that you have given us?
Correct.
Can you tell us how you came to draft the operational orders? What gave you the instructions, or who gave you the orders to do so?
Out of the meeting with the IG, I already said that in my statement, we had a meeting, a management meeting in Banjul, and out of that meeting, it became clear that this is an imminent operation, and then it was my duty to clarify and then give instructions to the men on the ground as to what they should do. It came out of that meeting when we had that briefing meeting of the imminent situation.
And it is correct that you expected that the officers below you would be accountable to you for their actions?
Yes.
Like you would be to the DIG and also to the IGP?
Correct. That's correct.
As in the chain of command in the police?
That's correct.
Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, you asked me to talk about the operational orders, which I did. I mean, maybe
Yes,
perhaps
no,
you should ask me more questions.
Yes, no, I was just, you were explaining about the meeting that you held at the leadership level of the police.
No, you ask how I go about writing those orders. I'm saying it comes out of a situational briefing of the leadership of the police. And that's how on the 7th, when the IG called up the senior leadership and said or talked about an imminent situation, which was briefed to him by the crime management section. So out of that meeting, I already realized that there is an imminent need for, preparing the men for any eventuality.
And this was on the 7th?
This was on the 7th.
This was 3 days before the demonstrations?
Correct.
Would you be surprised to know that your divisional heads have said that they did not receive these operational orders?
I will be surprised because in the record there is always an indication once orders are written they should be distributed and then they are sent out. So I'll be surprised if any one of them would say that he didn't receive the orders. They're supposed to be received, and I guess checking in the police records they should find a distribution of operational orders in the vehicle.
Would you say that it was a lie if any of your divisional heads stated that they did not receive these operational orders?
They're supposed to receive it. Anybody who says he didn't receive it, I consider that as a lie, yes.
And what mechanism did you have in place to ensure that these operational orders were actually implemented on the ground?
I alluded to you to that earlier on. I said we don't have any, effective system to see to read that it's sent, because once they are written, they are taken to the registry, and then it is the registry's responsibility to convey by marking, or putting highlighters on the names of the destination they are supposed to go, and then they are sent out. So we don't have an effective way of monitoring to ensure it falls in the right hands and then the people have gotten it.
Yeah. My question was whether you had an effective system for implementation, not whether or not they were to be sent.
Say that again? I don't understand the question, please.
The mechanism for the follow-up to see that the orders were implemented and done.
No, okay. Oh, I understand now. So whether or not there is a mechanism to follow up, it's about your question is? Yes,
and make sure that the orders were actually implemented.
No, we don't have any mechanism for that. You understand? What I said earlier on is when orders are given, you count on the trust of your divisional OCs to implement those orders. We don't have any monitoring mechanism to make sure that they are implemented. And again, to further qualify that, police in those days and what we now have or what may now obtain would be different. This is like 20 years ago you're talking about.
And you did mention earlier on as well that this was not an effective system. Do you still agree?
That this is not?
That was not an effective system.
Yes. I totally agree that in our time, we have gaps, we have lapses, things happen, and perhaps, and that's what I would always say and maintain, that if it were today, I would have done those things differently.
And in the eventuality that there was a problem on the ground as to the implementation of these operational orders, how would they be sorted out?
How would they be?
How would they be sorted out? Was there any process by which you would be involved or message could be sent to you to help them sort out the problems with the operational orders?
Oh, you mean from the OCs, you mean?
Yes.
No. I mean, that mechanism don't exist, that's what I'm saying. Normally, if you give orders, what would happen, one of the things I would remember happening, not specifically on the April 2011, on certain orders, when they don't understand it, they can always call, or they walk into your office and they say, okay, oh, you talked about this. It appears we need some clarification on this, and I would clarify.
And
and I will do the clarification, though. Time and again, that happened in a few times.
if the orders were ineffective and they needed to be changed, would they come back to you for that change?
Normally, when you go into operations, that's not the time to start changing orders. You know, you design, you craft these orders based on the intelligence and the information you have. And when you finalize them and then making sure what you have written is accurate, you send them. So in the middle of the operation, you cannot come back to correct orders if that's what you meant. That cannot happen. That's impractical.
According to the meeting that you had at the office of at the headquarters, the leadership meeting about the demonstrations, was there any particular unit of the police force that was responsible for maintaining law and order during the demonstrations?
No, there wasn't any. This was a management meeting.
Isn't it correct that the PIU were identified as the force that should maintain law and order during the demonstrations?
That's correct.
That was my question.
Yeah, they were the ones identified. I was thinking you were asking if they were in the briefing meeting on the 7th. I'm like, no, they're not.
Should that not have been the case? Should they not have been at the briefing?
No, that should not have been the case, and that's why the orders are here defining how they should comport themselves.
But they were the force or the unit on the ground on that day.
They are not the only ones. This is also, as you can see, we mentioned about Brikama, we mentioned about the provinces, we mentioned about other areas as well. So, and intervention is not everywhere. So within this is something that is generalized based on the information that we have. So even the general duty has a role in this.
But were they effectively leading the operations on the ground?
Say again?
Were the PIU unit effectively leading the operations on the ground?
For their part, for wherever they are leading that. For the other parts, wherever the general duty is, the OC in those areas will be leading it.
Could you tell us about the PIU and what kind of unit they were? What was their role?
The PIU is a police intervention unit. It's a unit that has been put together by the state to carry out specific tasks relating to crowd control, relating to security duties at football activities or in election duties and so on. So it's a specialized unit that is, put together to provide specific tasks, of maintaining law and order, different from the general duty.
And so they would be the unit that would effectively be the ones who would be able to take control of a situation like this where you needed effective mechanism for crowd control.
If you talk about effectiveness, yes, because they are better trained and then equipped for those kind of things. But then you can also say, I would also comfortably say that the general duty as well has riot equipment and so on, and they can also be tasked to carry out public order functions.
But would they have the necessary training like the PIU would in controlling crowds and maintaining order during demonstrations or riots?
Certainly not, because I told you the PIU is a specialized unit trained specifically to carry out functions like that, as opposed to the general duty, who may be trained, or some are trained and not adequately, but they also come as a reinforcement, or they come in other areas where the PIU is not available, and then they provide duties.
Did you have adequate numbers of PIU men to cover the demonstrations during April 10th and 11th?
No.
Was that why you needed to incorporate other members of other units?
The demonstration, we never anticipated for it, but I'm saying that, when situations happen and then there are, reinforcement is needed from the general duty, they do come.
Mr. Sowe, you said that the operational orders cannot be changed midway. Is that correct?
In the middle of operations, no.
However, if that became necessary, what would happen?
I have no idea on that. As far as I know, and what my instinct tells me, is that in the middle of an operation, you cannot change written orders. That's my understanding of your question. In the middle of it all, and something needed to be modified or something needed to be adjusted, practically, you cannot do that in the middle of an operation. That's the point I'm trying to make.
So what would be the solution as Commissioner of Operations?
The solution perhaps would be, for example, ask for reinforcement or find other ways to handle it, but not to change the orders. Because those orders, in effect, and considering the period some 20 years ago, can I?
Yes, please.
No, I'm saying those orders in the middle of the operation. In fact, I said earlier on that translating these orders to the men mostly is verbally done. So you wonder, when do you want to go back to the drawing board to adjust something in writing for people to start following? So that's the impracticality of it. That's what I'm trying to explain.
And how about verbally? Would that be possible?
Verbally may be possible. Verbally may be possible, because then you can say withdraw, for example, or you can say don't do this, or you can say do it another way around, which is not defined, but somebody experienced and knows how to avert a situation could probably use that knowledge and then help to avert a situation. That's possible.
And was that the situation on the 10th and 11th of April? Did you change those operational orders or make suggestions to your men on the ground?
I did not. I did not change those orders in the middle of the operations. No.
Did you authorize anyone else to do so?
No.
Are you aware that your operational orders were changed by anybody?
I am not as far as I know. As far as I know, the operational orders I wrote remains the guidelines for the police to conduct themselves. But inevitably, the police have conducted themselves away from what the orders have said. That one I can confirm.
We will come back to that. But can you just tell us what happened on the 10th day of April? Okay. Before we get to that, kindly just tell us what happened after you issued the operational orders and they were disseminated, as you said, to the men. What happened next?
Now, what happened next is we waited for the day to come, and then we were looking for further information from, the other parts of the police who provided this information, whether there are any new developments and so on. And up to D-Day on the 10th of April, I didn't hear anything further, and I didn't do anything in addition to issuing the orders. I did not do anything. We just waited until the very day itself to see how it unfolds.
And what would be the normal procedure after the conclusion of the operations?
The normal procedure would be to call back a debrief to see what has happened, what went wrong, what needed to be fixed, and what actually is the outcome of the operations. That's debriefing, though. That should happen.
What about in terms of weapons, guns, and ammunition? What would happen in regard to that?
If they were defined in the orders and were used, then there would be a review of the conduct with which they were handled. But if they don't so in the orders, it means, they are not part of the orders or they're not part of the debriefing. But for the case of April 10 and 11, after the incident, it was understood that weapons were used.
And what did you do about that? Did you check to see what weapons were used and by whom?
No. I did not check. I should have checked. I did not. And I take responsibility for that.
You accept responsibility for failing to investigate the matter properly?
And the very good reason for that is I was scared of initiating anything because the state was interested in it.
That's a major failure on your part, Mr. Sowe. Wouldn't you agree?
I take responsibility for not really conducting any investigation in the aftermath. I should have done that as Commissioner of Operations, but I did not.
Do you know how many weapons were issued?
I have no idea.
Did you need to have checked that?
Yeah, but that's all I'm saying. That's what I said earlier on, that I should have really done some kind of a debriefing, thorough check or investigation, if you like, given that the aftermath of the operation involved casualties.
And did
But
you
I was scared to even kickstart it.
did you try to investigate as to who carried out the shootings?
Those are my own little ways of trying to find out, but not anything formal. Like I said, I was scared to formalize any investigation, so I could not.
Can you tell us why you were scared?
Because the regime at the time was interested in this event, and they already have taken control of it, and I just didn't have the audacity to say, let's mount an investigation. Who did what? Who carried the weapon? Who gave the orders? Who died? Who fired? Perhaps these are all things, under normal circumstances, my office should have been able to do that, but I did not.
How did they take control of the students' demonstrations?
You mean the state?
Yes, how did the state take
No,
control?
because when these negotiations were happening, the meetings went up to the office of the vice president, and then there was that interest by the state to work with the students and then handle this demonstration, which got out of hand. And when that happened, the state, directly dictates what the IG would have done. Because I would have imagined that under normal circumstances, for example, and such a thing happened and people died, there should have been an inquiry right away, from within the police to find out, who did what and so on.
Mr. Sowe, can we just kindly now move on to the 10th of April, 2000? Okay. Where were you on that day?
I was out and about. I was once at GTTI in the morning, and then I was in Banjul. I was at the PIU, Serekunda, and on Kairaba Avenue. I was in all those places.
Where were you first on that day?
GTTI.
And what did you observe?
I observed that the students were gathering, and then some of them were trying to convince their colleagues from other vehicles settling to Banjul to come down and then join the demonstration.
What time was this?
This was around between 7 and 8, not specifically, I don't know the time. But it's early morning though, it's in the morning hours between 7 and 8.
And why were you there on the ground?
I was on my way to work.
Did you stop?
Yes.
Did you come down?
Yes.
And kindly tell us what you observed.
I observed that the vehicles flying to Banjul were being stopped, and then students were asked to come down, and then traffic was beginning to block. Yeah, and then some kind of a traffic blockage was developing.
Did you do anything?
What I did was to call the police intervention unit to say they should come, that this thing is happening. They should find a way to negotiate, to disperse people to go on their normal duties.
So you were giving instructions for what should have been done?
Yes, certainly. I was giving instructions for them to come to allow traffic to flow. I did that.
You were calling for the implementation of your operational orders.
Correct.
What happened next?
The PIU came and I went to Banjul.
So you were not there when they came?
No, when they came I was not there.
And who was heading the unit of the PIU?
ASP Cisse.
When you were on the ground before the PIU came, did you observe how many students were in the vicinity?
Well, they were in their hundreds, though, not many. Some were on the GTTI gate, others were right on the lane, on the Banjul highway, where the vehicles were settling, and then they're looking for students to come down.
And did you observe anything about them? Were they carrying anything?
I did not see them carry anything.
Did they carry any weapons?
The students, you mean?
Yes.
I don't see it.
What was their general comportment?
Well, initially, up to the time I was leaving for Banjul, they were. It was like a resentful crowd a little bit, not certainly joyful because they were not jubilating, but then it was a crowd in my mind, to my description, a crowd that was like, anticipating for something to happen and urging people to come join. That's how it appeared to me.
Were they peaceful?
Generally, yes. Only that what I didn't see as normal is that idea of stopping vehicles and then blocking the traffic, and not allowing people going to work to have their lane free up for them to go.
Why was the need to disperse the students if they were there peacefully?
They were disturbing the traffic.
Apart from that?
That's all I observed in the first place. That's all. And that's how,
Apologies, please proceed.
No, I'm saying that was my observation. The blockage of the traffic, not allowing commuters to go on their normal business was the cause for concern.
Couldn't that have been dealt with by just allowing them to get away from the traffic?
No, in my mind, at my judgment at that time, the traffic was systematically continuing to block, and then we needed to ask them to allow the vehicles to move.
That is what I was saying. Could they have not just been removed from the roadside to avoid obstructing the traffic?
That should be the thing to be done, to allow them, to tell them to leave the road and allow people to go on their business.
And what happened next?
So I went to Banjul, and by the time I returned from Banjul, this crowd has changed characteristics. It turned out to be a decent crowd, and then venting anger, and then arguing with the police.
Before you went to Banjul and returned, how long were you at GTTI?
About 20, 30 minutes, not long.
And where did you go to after that?
At the headquarters in Banjul.
How long did you remain at the headquarters?
About less than 2 hours.
So you were back around what time? Back to GTTI?
Around 10, 11-ish, thereabout.
Why did you find the need to come back?
Because the April 10 D-Day that we were waiting for the imminent thing, what I saw with GTTI suggests that, the students are definitely going to go out. So I was curious to come see how the operation will be handled.
And when you came back, what did you see?
When I came back, I found out that it was really getting out of hand, and then the students were not adhering to the command of the police, and then the police are also not letting go. They are, pushing the students to disperse. So it was chaotic when I returned.
And can you just describe how it was chaotic? What were the police doing?
The police were trying to disperse the crowd, asking them to go on their lawful duties. And the crowd was adamant, and then they stayed on.
And how were the police asking them to disperse?
By applying the characteristics of crowd control, using their bats and helmets, the buttons and seal, and then honking on them, and then using the the public address system and asking the crowd to disperse.
We have received evidence to suggest that the police were actually chasing students and beating them. Is that not the case?
That is also part of the case because I saw people running after, the police running after students. Yes, I saw that.
And was that part of the operational orders?
That's not part of the orders.
So what did you do about that?
I couldn't do much at the time because it was chaotic, and then I don't even have the commander on the ground to be able to speak to him and then tell him that this is not normal. So it was really chaotic. So I just couldn't, I was helpless. I was just there helpless. And that's how I started calling the deputy IG.
Couldn't you have commanded any of the men on the ground?
No.
Couldn't you have assumed command
No.
of the forces?
Perhaps I could have, but then that didn't occur to me at the time.
Wasn't that a major failure on your part?
I consider that as unfortunate circumstances. I would have done that differently today.
As Commissioner of Operations and the commander, effective commander on the ground, shouldn't you have taken control of that situation?
No, I'm not the effective commander on the ground. I'm the commissioner of police coordinating. I'm not the effective. The commander is the one in charge of the men who should be responsible for curbing the men and then making sure they execute their duties within the confines of the law.
You were the commander of OC Momodu Sise, who was the effective commander on the ground.
Yes, Momodu Sise was.
So you could have assumed command over his men.
I could have, but I did not.
And why did you not?
It didn't occur to me that I should.
And that is why we are saying that that is a major failure on your part.
On my part, at that material instance, yes, I totally agree.
Are you taking responsibility?
I take full responsibility for not, commandeering the whole command and then do it myself.
Please tell us what you did next.
I proceeded, I went to the other places. I was at the PAU, I was at Westfield, I was also at Serekunda, and also at the Kairaba Avenue.
Was there any other security officers around before you left GTTI?
Before I left GTTI, there was it's only the police that was there.
My apologies, I was just conferring with the legal team. What were you saying?
No, when I was leaving the GTTI, there was no other security that I observed.
So you left GTTI in a chaotic manner?
The deputy IG came, found me before I left.
Was it chaotic?
Yes.
When he found you?
Yes.
You did not have control over the situation?
No.
And your men were beating students and chasing them?
I saw them doing that.
Did you see them arrest anybody?
No.
And was that contrary to the operational orders, the way the men were conducting themselves?
When it comes to the beating, yes, that was. Because we already defined in the order that they should comport themselves and use only that force that is necessary. They should also not provoke the situation, and they should be cautious. We defined that in the orders.
And you could see that by their actions, they were provoking students and provoking the situation that eventually ensued, the chaotic situation.
Well, I don't know how it started, because when I came, it was chaotic. I'm telling you exactly what I saw when I came. What provoked that, I was not privy to.
By them chasing the students and beating them, they were provoking a bigger reaction. Wouldn't you agree?
No, that's what I'm saying. How it all started, I was not privy to. I'm telling you what I found happening. That's what I'm saying. And that is not what the orders have defined.
Yes, what we are asking is not how it started, but how it was actually unfolding when you arrived.
Yes.
Would you agree that the police were provoking the situation, the chaotic situation that they found themselves in?
Yes, I agree.
By beating students and chasing them?
Yes.
You said that you left. Where else did you go after that?
At the police intervention unit and also at Westfield and Serekunda.
Please tell us what happened at these various places that you went, starting with the PIU.
There were people all over the highway, on the Banjul Westfield highway, and then it was just very scanty people groups here and there, and uncontrolled, and then inorderly.
Do you know how many forces were deployed in that area
Where?
by the PIU?
No, I said one platoon. That's what I put. It's in the orders, one platoon. If they have deployed more than that, that's not what the order says.
You're saying that only one platoon was
Sorry,
deployed.
3 platoons, I think.
And how many men did that consist of?
A platoon will have up to 25 to 30 people.
So you're an estimate of what, about 70?
About 60, 70 is here.
And how many students, by the time you came back from Banjul, how many students were at GTTI?
Oh, there were many. I don't know the number. I cannot estimate, but there were many.
What did you do at the PIU?
I didn't do anything. I passed by to check, and then I continued. I went to Westfield.
What were you checking?
Looking at the generality of the situation as to what's going on and what's happening.
Did you come down from
Out of
your
the car?
vehicle?
Yes.
And what did you do? Who did you talk to?
No, I didn't speak with anybody. I asked for C. Senjai, the commander. I couldn't find him there, so I also continued. I left.
C. Senjai was commanding the forces at GTTI.
So when I returned in GTTI, I couldn't see him. I didn't find him.
So you went to look for him at the PIU.
Well, I was continuing to look for other things as well, including looking for him too.
So you did not find C. Senjai at the PIU?
No.
Do you know where he was?
I don't know. I called. I couldn't reach out to him.
So he was not commanding the forces then, on the ground?
Maybe that's the circumstance that sort of, manifests itself. The fact that I couldn't find him suggests that, he was nowhere to be found. And I called, I couldn't get him. So that's what the indication is.
Would that be one of the reasons for the chaos with no commander on the ground giving directions to the men?
It could be. I didn't arrive at that conclusion though at the time.
What conclusion did you arrive at?
That it is all chaotic, and then nobody seems to be in charge, pushing to control, the situation. That it got out of hand completely.
Did it concern you that you did not see your commander on the ground?
It was my concern.
And what actions did you take?
I called, I couldn't find him.
Did you take any mitigating actions?
Not instantly at the time, I did not.
Did you find another commander for the men?
No, I cannot find any other commander at the time.
Did you look for his deputy?
I don't think he had deputy at the time though, so I cannot recall on that.
Or the most senior person on the ground?
Maybe the most senior person on the ground, but I don't think he had a deputy at the time.
Did you find the most senior person after him?
No.
It seems like you just gave up on the situation, didn't you?
Not like I gave up, but then it's such that, it was chaotic, and then like I said, I would have done it differently, but then it was really uncontrollable, and then I don't even have an idea of, who to talk to and how to direct, the situation to be calmed down.
Where did you go to next?
Westfield.
And what did you observe at Westfield?
There were attempts to burn down the Gamtel, I guess.
Sorry, Mr. Sowe.
That's okay. I can see the drama over there though, so.
We're not supposed to see that.
No, okay, I close my eyes, I don't see anything.
Let's proceed. Please proceed and tell us what happened at Westfield.
No, at Westfield there were attempts to burn down the Gamtel, and then I also found that situation there.
And
then people were poised to, get an opportunity to vandalize or to loot something.
And who was this? Which people are you referring to?
The onlookers, the people who are onlookers. Then at this particular time, it's difficult to differentiate who is a student and who is not, because people are just mumbling all over the place, and then it's always difficult to determine whether this is a real student, or people even change their addresses or camouflage in certain ways and so on. But then these are all onlookers, who are just standing by to look for an opportunity for something to happen.
Were there any other men on the ground at Westfield?
Men
Yeah,
as
were
in-
there PIU officials at Westfield?
At Westfield, no.
Were there any other security forces at Westfield?
I think the soldiers, I saw them. The soldiers were there, but then they were not in control of the Westfield, but then they were in the vicinity around the cooperative. I saw them. That was while I was in my car going.
Soldiers from where?
I think it should be from the armed forces.
And what were they doing?
I have no idea. I didn't speak with them, so I cannot tell you what they were there for. But I do know that they were in that vicinity. I saw them.
Did it concern you that the soldiers were there, considering that as per your operational orders, it was the police who were
It may be
supposed to command the
possible-
situation?
That's what I'm coming to explain, that it may be possible that reinforcement was sought from the armed forces. Because when I escalated the situation to the deputy IG, I guess the next thing would be to ask for reinforcement to come help.
Are you speculating, or is that something that you know?
No, because I didn't do those kind of stuff, so I was assuming that must have been the case as to why they are out there.
Would it have been normal just to check with the army and find out who gave them instructions to be on the ground?
No, I just wanted to hasten to say that not for me to contact the army for that. It should be the police IGP who has the authority to request the army.
Did you ask the DIG or go back to headquarters to inquire?
No, I did not.
Isn't that another failure on your part?
It could be, yes, that I should have asked to know why they are there. I did not ask.
And an important one too at that.
Yes.
Can you tell us what happened next?
Yeah, I went to Serekunda.
Please tell us what happened at Serekunda.
Yeah, in Serekunda, there was fire at the station, and then I understand it was an attack, to burn down the station.
Can we just have the timelines on the different areas that you visited? What time were you at GTTI?
I told you it was around 10. I was not marking the time. So all these things happened within a span of about 2 to 3 hours from 10 o'clock or from 10-ish thereabout. So I was not recording the timing.
So this all happened within the space of 2 hours, did you
2
say?
to 3 hours.
2
yes.
to 3 hours. What time were you at PIU?
That's what I'm saying. I cannot be specific.
Can you just estimate, please?
Estimate maybe around after 10.
And when did you go to Westfield?
So for example, in PIU, I didn't stay more than 10, 15 minutes there. Then I proceed to PIU, to Westfield. Then I went to, because then I had my vehicle and my driver. Then I was going around to see.
By 1 p.m., where were you?
1 p.m. I need to recollect on that. I can't remember exactly where I was at 1 p.m. But it must be within the Greater Banjul area, though, for sure. It's either around 1 p.m. I may be around Karaba Avenue, though, because then I would have left Serekunda already.
So by 1 p.m. you were in Banjul?
No, Karaba Avenue.
Okay, in Karaba Avenue. And what did you observe at Karaba Avenue?
Karaba Avenue too is just the same onlookers. Traffic had generally stopped because vehicles are scared of getting their windshield or something vandalized. and then people were, looking on, and in Carabao Avenue specifically, I was around the post office because I thought, that they are going to also attack the Gamtel there, as they have attempted at the Westfield. So it was just simply onlookers that I saw.
And during this time, what did you observe about the PIU officers who were on the ground in these vicinities that you?
Which vicinity? Where I was?
Caraba Avenue, Serekunda.
No, the PIU were not on Caraba Avenue. I didn't see them there.
Were they at Serekunda?
No. Serekunda was the general duty that was there that I saw.
And what did you observe about their conduct and how they were handling the demonstration?
Well, they were just standing by and looking on the fire raging, and nobody was doing anything.
Did the general duty police officers carry any weapons?
General duty officers?
Yes.
I don't see them with weapons, no.
Did they have appropriate riot gear?
Yes, some of them.
Is it correct that the riot gear was not sufficient to go around all
Not
of the
sufficient at all.
officers?
Yes, that is accurate. It's not sufficient.
And how were police officers who did not have riot gear supposed to defend themselves?
Well, they are defenseless though. If they don't have riot gears, then they cannot be part of the public order management exercise, because then they don't have riot gears. So normally, if you don't have a riot gears, you stay indoors or you stay at a protected place.
Were you at the PIU premises around 1 p.m.?
No.
And did you see the PIU carry any weapons?
No.
At this stage, at 1 p.m., did you see the PIU officers carry any weapons?
My answer is a straight no. That's what I'm saying.
Did you hear any gunshots?
I don't.
Did you hear that anyone was shot?
Yes.
And what did you hear?
People talk about it. They said people are shot. Yes, I heard that.
And who did they tell you shot them?
People said it's the police officers that shot at the demonstrators. That's what I hear people say.
Please repeat your answer.
People say that it's the police officers that shot at the demonstrators. That's what they said. That's what I heard too.
Were you surprised to hear this?
Very, very surprised, because they are not supposed to.
And what did you do with that information?
That's what I alluded to earlier on. After everything was over and the debriefing happened, perhaps I should have, instigate or sort of push for an investigation. But I could not because I was scared.
At that stage, did you do anything? That was the question.
Where?
At the stage that you heard there were gunshots and people were injured and it was the police who actually shot them.
I did not do anything. That's what I said. I did not do anything.
You agree that is another failure on your part?
At that material instant, I couldn't have done anything. It's just information that I heard, and this has to be verified and investigated.
Well, you could have verified the information. You could have asked. You could have investigated.
That's what I said. I was scared of initiating. I said that.
And that is why we're asking, isn't that a failure on your part?
That's what I already said yes to that earlier on, that my inability to sort of initiate an investigation, perhaps I would have done that differently today, and I regret that.
Did you make any attempts to stop the shootings?
I was not at the shooting.
But you heard that people were shot.
That's what I'm saying, yes.
So did you make any attempts to go and find out where the shooting was coming from and to stop it?
I already said I should have done that, and I did not. I alluded to that, and you want me to repeat the same thing unless you want me to say it differently. I take responsibility for not initiating an investigation to leading into how and who and what happened into that shooting. As Commissioner of Operations, I wish I had done that, but I did not.
This is about stopping the shooting at that moment in
That's
time.
what I'm saying. That material time of shooting, the fact that I was not there, I couldn't have stopped it. That's what I said.
You could have gone to PIU to find out who was doing the shooting and how they obtained guns, which was against the operational orders.
Initially, when I heard it, it was not like I know it is exactly at the PIU where it was happening. That's my point. So I couldn't have gone to PIU because going to PIU means you know exactly what happened and you're going to find out.
But you were told it was the police.
Yeah, I was told that that the police was the one who actually was shooting, but I couldn't verify it.
Did you call any of your superior officers like the IGP?
No, the deputy IG.
Did you call the deputy IGP?
I told him the following day.
At that point in time, Mr. Sowe, that's what we're talking about.
No, at that material point in time, I told you I did not do anything. That's what I'm saying. When I had the information around Kerba Avenue, I did not do anything.
Why did you have to wait until the following day?
To do what?
To report it to the DIG, like you said.
No, because the operation at the time it was chaotic, and then it was like a state of confusion, and then the deputy IG already is on the ground. So my assumption was he already would have known that this shooting has taken place. So it wasn't, prudent for me to call him and then tell him at the time. It didn't occur to me at that moment.
Wouldn't that be more reason to go to him?
Second?
Wouldn't that be more reason to report the matter to him?
I did. It's just that it was lately reported, but I did.
That's the point. It came too late in the day.
Yes.
And how do you feel about that?
I feel uncomfortable because, I had said to myself, this is unfortunate, it had happened, it shouldn't have, or perhaps there should have been ways to prevent it, that didn't happen. I feel uncomfortable about that.
Do you have anything to say to
At this
the
point,
Gambian
it's
public?
just to say to the victims and their families that my part of the role that I should have played, if that would have helped to, to avert this situation, I wish I had done that. And I just want to say sorry for any mishap on my side for not following it up. But I wish if my action would have translated into averting the situation and I did not, I feel so sorry. And then I just want to say sorry to the victims and their families for that.
We will come back to that tomorrow. Thank you very much, Mr. Witness. Mr. Chairman, I hand over the witness to you. We haven't completed. We will complete the testimony tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Counsel, and thank you very much, Mr. Sowe, for the testimony. Counsel, I always have the tendency of preempting you guys. If I'm preempting you now on something that, if Mr. Sowe could clarify that, concerns some events in Brikama, and I just want to know if their operational orders had any references to use of blank and live bullets.
We will deal with that tomorrow, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. See, I suspected that I might be preempting you. Fine, I'll hold my questions until tomorrow then.
Thank you very much.
Meeting is adjourned. We come back at 10 o'clock sharp tomorrow morning. Thank you all. Whoops, sorry. Yeah, did very well.